Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would break down this main fight that is going to be happening between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou in the rematch, which I find a very, very interesting match. So, we're just going to break this fight down. I could try to break down the main card if I wanted to, but for those of you guys that have not heard, Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega, I think it was just a couple days ago, it was revealed that Alexander Volkanovski unfortunately came down with COVID-19, I believe because one of his training partners did. So that fight has now been canceled, unfortunately. So Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega is off. I believe the fight probably still will happen sometime this year. We just don't know when. So we'll have to see what happens. But when it comes down to it, with that fight really being off the card, I really don't see a bunch of other big cards on there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad card. And Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque and Sean O'Malley versus Thomas Almeida, they're not bad fights, but I don't really take a look at them and say, wow, I need to rush and do a video about them right now. If you do want to know my predictions about those fights, I believe Jamie Malarkey versus Kama Worthy is up first. I predicted Jamie Malarkey over Kama Worthy. I predicted Sean O'Malley over Thomas Almeida, and I predicted Tyron Woodley over Vicente Luque, and I also predicted Alexander Volkanovski over Brian Ortega. Those are my picks. We'll see how many I get right. But for this Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou fight, let's just break it down. Let's get into it. Who do I think is going to win this fight and why? Well, I think this is a very interesting rematch. Ngannou and Stipe, I believe, first faced off in, I think it was what year was it? Was it 2018? It was a couple of years ago at least. I know that. I thought it was about 3 years ago, but I could be wrong about that. Someone correct me on it if I'm wrong. But when it comes down to it, either way, the first fight happened. I remember Francis Ngannou coming in as the favorite against Stipe Miocic, and understandably why. Francis Ngannou is the favorite in some of those bigger fights, kind of like Deontay Wilder is the favorite in some of his bigger fights. Because even though Ngannou doesn't always appear to be, a multi-dimensional fighter, he does have enough striking ability to, hold his own. And on top of that, he has that one-shot knockout power. Now, in my opinion, and a lot of Deontay Wilder fans are not going to agree with this. That's okay. I'm already on a lot of their shit list, so it is what it is. But when it comes down to it, I believe Francis Ngannou, at least as an MMA fighter, is more skilled in his category than Deontay Wilder is in his category, meaning that I believe Francis Ngannou is a more well-rounded fighter as an MMA fighter than Deontay Wilder is as a boxer. And what I mean by that basically is that Deontay Wilder, in terms of the boxing community or in terms of boxing, is not looked at as a person with A-class skills. In terms of an MMA fighter, you can take a look at Francis Ngannou and compare him with other MMA fighters and say, okay, well, even though he doesn't look like a complete multi-dimensional fighter, he does look at least like you could argue, A-class striker, if not an A-class striker around that range. Because it's not necessarily like Francis Ngannou is a bad striker. He certainly can knock you out. He certainly can compete when it comes to striking in terms of almost anybody out there. But he's dealing with a champion here, Stipe Miocic, who's defended the belt more than anybody else in the heavyweight division in history. I believe he's defended it a total of 4 times, 3 times in a row, and another one when he defeated Daniel in that third fight. So when it comes down to it, Stipe Miocic, there's a reason why he is probably the greatest heavyweight fighter in the UFC's history. Stipe Miocic is probably the most complete fighter that there has ever been in the heavyweight division's history, at least from what I've seen. And that includes Cain Velasquez. That includes, I'm trying to think who else, Brock Lesnar. Who else was the heavyweight champion? Even Daniel Cormier. And Daniel Cormier, in my opinion, is a very complete fighter. But Stipe is even a little bit greater than him, as proved in that third fight. But when it comes down to it, man, how much of a chance does Ngannou have in this fight? I think that Ngannou, what I'll say is this. You can never count him out. It's the same thing with Deontay Wilder in boxing. You can never count him out of these big fights because he has that one-shot knockout power And on top of that, he's not the worst striker in the world. So if he does land the right punch on Stipe Miocic, it's very fair to say that he possibly could come out of this fight. You know, if he does land a fair punch on Stipe Miocic, he could knock him out because Francis Ngannou has that one punch knockout power. Now, the question is he going to land that perfect one-shot knockout punch? Because I don't think Francis Ngannou is just going to be able to go in there and, you know, just nick Stipe Miocic and just touch him and knock him out. It's going to have to be a pretty flush punch. Because there was even a couple of flush punches in their first fight where Francis Ngannou caught Stipe, and Stipe still did not go down. Now, you could tell he was a little bit hurt from it maybe, but not really to the point to where he was nearly knocked out or knocked down or anything like that. So it is what it is. And then, you know, there's just a bunch of other questions when it comes into it, because not only do I believe Stipe actually is the greater striker, but Stipe may not even want to go that route at first because, you know, sure, you can be the greater striker than somebody, but unless you're in a boxing match, you know, and if you're facing someone like Francis Ngannou or a Deontay Wilder, you know, if you're in MMA, you don't want to go that route all the time because, you know, basically you're just risking getting knocked out, even if you do think you can outstrike that guy. The question is overall, how impactful is Stipe Miocic? How is his wrestling going to be in this fight? Now, we all know Stipe Miocic is an A-grade wrestler, and I tried to tell people that also in the Daniel Cormier fights. I said Stipe has a chance to actually out-wrestle and get Daniel in the clinch in the third fight because Stipe is an A-grade wrestler. He's not just a very good wrestler. He's a great wrestler. He is an all-time great wrestler. And we also seen this in the first fight, against Francis Ngannou. So how impactful is Stipe Miocic wrestling going to be? We'll see what happens. There's a certain amount of people overall that think that Francis Ngannou has improved his takedown defense, has improved his wrestling ability. I can't say that I would know. And I don't think any of us would truly know that because there's really been no fights to where we've seen them like, wow, he's really improved his takedown defense. Wow, he's really improved his wrestling or his ground game. We've just not seen that because all of his wins, I believe he has a 4-fight winning streak right now. He was on a 2-fight losing streak when he lost to Stipe Miocic and then lost to Derek Lewis. And there's also another point I'm going to bring up with that when it comes down to it, but we'll get there when we get there. But none of the opponents that Francis Ngannou beat within his last 4 fights, they're not the complete fighters that Stipe Miocic is. And that's not me saying that they were not great wins. They were great wins. Especially the win over Junior Dos Santos, and the Rosenstreich one was pretty good, even though I don't look at Rosenstreich as an A-grade fighter, but it is what it is. He had some very, very good wins. So Francis Ngannou deserves a hell of a lot of credit. But the bottom line is this: I just don't see a fighter out there that really can test Francis Ngannou, you know, other than a Stipe Miocic in that division. Because Stipe Miocic, once again, is an A-grade wrestler. And all of Francis Ngannou's wins as of recent, they never went outside the first round. So I don't really know what to judge by that. Because probably the fighter that would have challenged Francis Ngannou the most when it comes down to it, at least in terms of all-around game, maybe actually would have been Curtis Blades. Out of all of them. Maybe Cain Velasquez, but you can argue that Cain Velasquez was not necessarily the same fighter that he had used to be. But it is what it is. When it comes down to what I'll say is this: I do believe that Stipe Miocic's wrestling is going to be impactful in this fight. I do believe that he still is going to be able to get takedowns and that he's going to be able to beat Ngannou in the clinch. And that also leads us to another question. If this fight heads outside of round 1, what will Francis Ngannou be able to do? And that's really the question, because where is his stamina going to be? Where is his confidence going to be? What is his new plan of attack? Because Ngannou is going to have to improve on all those things if he wants to beat Stipe Miocic in this fight. Now, who knows? Once again, he could just land one very good shot and end up knocking him out. But when it comes down to it, I think that it's going to be decently hard for Ngannou to do that. Stipe Miocic, not only in my opinion, is a better striker, I don't know if he's going to try to risk that as early on this time around. I think that he realized, okay, well, the last time we fought, he was pretty weak to the takedowns, he was pretty weak in the clinch, and his gas tank pretty much ran out after round 1. And that's also another question. Where is Ngannou's gas tank going to be? Once again, I don't really know where his gas tank is because all the recent fights that he's had, let's even count his last 5 fights because one did go to the decision, a fight that he actually lost. I can't tell you overall that his stamina improved even in that loss because Ngannou wasn't throwing anything in that Derek Lewis fight. So when it comes down to it, that's also another question. You know, where is Francis Ngannou's gas tank? Is his gas tank better? Is his stamina better? Where is he in this equation when it comes down to, where is his gas tank? Not only that, where is his confidence level going to be? Because Stipe Miocic was able to basically embarrass Francis Ngannou the first time around. Not only in the wrestling and not only in the clinch, he was able to pretty much outstrike him. He was able to out-counter Francis Ngannou. And that affected Ngannou to the point to where he actually lost his next match against Derek Lewis because he was so afraid to throw and he was so afraid of getting countered. Is that going to happen again in this fight? That's also another question that I have. If Stipe is able to land some early shots, or if Francis Ngannou's a little bit tired, or if his game plan of attack isn't necessarily working like he would hope, let's say Stipe Miocic starts landing some shots. Let's say Stipe starts attacking the legs. He starts landing some shots to the body, or he starts countering Ngannou hard to the face, because Stipe also has a great power. Well, how's Ngannou going to react to that? Because the first time around we've seen he was very, very afraid of getting countered, not only in the Stipe fight, but it also had an after effect in his next fight against Derek Lewis. Is he going to have that same problem in the Stipe fight if Stipe gets shots off on him early? We'll see what happens. But it'll be interesting. What I'll say is this. I give Francis Ngannou, at the lowest, a 30% chance. At the highest, I'd give him about a 40% chance. Would I be shell-shocked if Francis Ngannou won this fight? No, I wouldn't even be shocked because you can never really be shocked when one of these big, huge punchers wins one of these fights. And not only that, Ngannou is not just all power. He does have a decent skill set. There are some people that say that he's not decently skilled. He does have a decent skill set, But Stipe Miocic in most categories just might be so far ahead of Ngannou. Because really the only area that Ngannou has an advantage over Stipe Miocic is, really the power. That's really about it. And maybe a chin, although I don't think Stipe Miocic has a bad chin. But when it comes down to it, those are really the only two advantages that he has over Stipe. Now we'll see. Sometimes those are all the advantages that you need. But, this reminds me a little bit of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, where the only areas where I saw Deontay Wilder having the advantage over Tyson Fury pretty much was the power. In that if Tyson Fury fought the right fight, he probably would win the fight. I just wasn't sure if he was going to. But he did in the rematch. And this is kind of along those same lines. If Stipe Miocic fights the right fight, I think he will win this fight. What do I think both fighters need to do? I think that Stipe Miocic, we'll see what happens with him. Maybe he doesn't want to risk striking with him early on. I could easily see Stipe Miocic trying to go in the clinch or trying to go for the wrestling takedowns early on, and I think Francis Ngannou will be expecting that. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Stipe actually may want to go with an attack to the legs first, and then overall, he'll try to get some shots off. Maybe actually will try to strike them, so he saves the wrestling and the clinch for a little bit later. I think either or could possibly work. What do I think Francis Ngannou is going to have to do in this fight? I think Francis Ngannou very early on is going to have to try and attack for the legs, stick a jab out there, because even though Stipe is a very good and great fighter, and is multi-dimensional, one area of weakness that Stipe has, maybe that you can say, is that he doesn't have a great head movement. Debatably, now his head movement I think has gotten a little bit better. But Daniel Cormier is not the only fighter where I've seen Stipe Miocic get hit or stunned. I also seen him get stunned against Alistair Overeem, and there's a couple of other fights maybe to where you can say he did not move, the greatest amount. So it is what it is, but we'll see. But it'll be interesting because I'm not sure where Francis Ngannou's I'm not really sure how long Francis Ngannou will be able to keep the attacks up, and that'll be the most interesting thing. Because Francis Ngannou, once again, where's his gas tank going to be? And, I would like to see Francis Ngannou use leg kicks, but is he going to use them consistently? Will he run out of gas within the first round? We'll just have to see what happens. And that's why I think this fight is so interesting. Ngannou does have that power, and he doesn't have as bad of a skill set as many people overall like to say that he does. But when it comes down to it, I just don't know if he's going to have the gas tank. I don't know if he's going to have the variety of attacks. And I don't know if Stipe Miocic is going to allow him to basically get off on those attacks. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to have to go with Stipe Miocic in this fight. I'm going to have to go with Stipe Miocic by unanimous decision. There's actually a certain amount of people that predict that Stipe Miocic might even stop him this time. Possible. Anything's possible. And Stipe Miocic, he does have that type of power. He does have that type of finishing ability. But when it comes down to it, I just think that I think it's a very interesting fight. This is a big challenge for Stipe. And if he's able to get through this fight, I believe his next fight will be against John Jones, because I believe John Jones is getting the winner of whoever, wins this fight, obviously. He's getting the winner of this fight. But anyways, when it comes down to it, that's pretty much about it. I'm going with Stipe Miocic. I just don't know if much has really changed, and that's pretty much the point of this video. And even if Ngannou, let's say he tries to conserve stamina, because that might actually be the biggest thing about this fight. Even if he does try to conserve stamina, he may not be throwing enough to win the fight, because Stipe has great stamina for a heavyweight. And when it comes down to it, he can throw consistently. And once again, he has a great power. Let's say Stipe also goes to the body of Ngannou. Who's saying that he doesn't stop Ngannou later on? We'll see what happens, man. I need to see where Ngannou's confidence is going to be in this fight. I need to see where his stamina is going to be in this fight. To be honest with you, I don't think much of that is going to change because his stamina, to be honest with you, I don't think much of that is going to change because he's too muscle bound. He weighs about 260, solid pure muscle when it comes down to it, and I don't think he's lost any of that weight for this fight. I don't see him really doing much in terms of outside of the first round or second round. If Stipe is able to last past the first or second round, this is most definitely Stipe's fight, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. It'll be very interesting, and we'll have to see. But anyways, I'm going with Stipe Miocic by unanimous decision. We'll see what happens. That's my breakdown. That's my prediction. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll talk to y'all later.